Okay, bio exam. We're going to go over Unit 8, the final unit of this class, Ecology. Let's get started. To begin, we're going to go over the hierarchy of ecology, and we're going to start with an organism. An organism is an individual living thing. An organism is considered a bacteria, a protist, a fungus, a plant, or an animal. Fun fact, viruses are not considered alive, so they're not organisms. Population is a group of the same species. At a specific time and place. Right now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 humans. This would be considered a population. We're all in first period at 8:30 in the morning. A community. This is multiple populations interacting at a specific...
Teachers and students, just to make you aware, there are prearranged...
Hey, as I was saying, a community is a population, multiple populations interacting at a specific place and time. Now, by judging by some of your answers on the mock exam, some of you confuse community and ecosystems. In fact, on the mock exam, the prompt would say community, and some students would arbitrarily write in ecosystem. A community is all the living things interacting with each other. For instance, there was a problem that had crabs, slugs, sea kelp, and otters. And the question was, what would happen if you removed otters from this community? And people would respond, the whole ecosystem would collapse. That would be incorrect because the ecosystem, as you're about to see in my definition, is all the non-living things as well as the living things. So if you were to say, I take out the otters from this community, the whole ecosystem crashes? No, because the ecosystem includes the sunlight, the air, the water, the dirt. None of that is going to be affected by taking otters out. So you don't, if it says community, stick with community. Don't arbitrarily put in ecosystem because you think that it's the appropriate word at that time. It's not. When you say ecosystems, you're referring to the abiotic factors as well, which is my next definition. An ecosystem is all of the biotic, which means living, and abiotic, which means non-living, factors in an area. Okay. Next, we have a biome. A biome is a large, naturally occurring ecosystem. And the examples could be like a tundra or a tropical rainforest or a temperate grassland or a savanna or a desert or a mountain or a coral reef. Very, very large areas. And then we have the biosphere. The biosphere is where all living things on a planet can be found. From the bottom of the ocean, where like the deepest parts of the ocean where living things live, all the way to the skies where the birds fly. That would be considered the biosphere. Earth, as we know now, is the only planet that has a biosphere. Perhaps one day we'll find planets with other biospheres, and all that would mean is we will find a planet with life. If we went to Mars and the only place they found life was in a crater, then that crater would basically be the biosphere. Okay, moving on. Properties of populations. So, hold on. We have size. Size is simply how many individuals in a population? One second, just pulling up some cards here. Okay, just looking at some of my cards that I have from College Board. Hopefully you guys got these too. Okay, density is how many individuals in a given area. Or the size of a population in a given area. All right, next we have dispersion pattern. This is the spacing of individuals within an area. Rachel, do you recall how a clumped dispersion pattern would appear?
The nutrients, or is it, are we plotting the nutrients or the?
Well, you're really, one plots the other, do they not?
Okay, so the nutrients and the organisms will be grouped together.
Okay, so she says organisms will be grouped together like this. And Rachel, why are they grouping like in this pattern?
Because of the nutrients are central.
Because that's where the nutrients are found. The areas that are bare, if I were to highlight those areas like here, you probably wouldn't find much nutrients in those areas, which is why you don't find any life there. Fun fact, this is the most common. This is the most common form of dispersion. Kevin, can you tell me how a uniform, why do I keep calling you Kevin? Chasen, you're sitting in your brother's exact seat, by the way, so it doesn't make it any easier for me. Jason, how does a uniform pattern of dispersion look?
It's like even distributed for like lines of dots, evenly spaced apart.
Uni means one, and form means like shape or appearance. So there's only one way that they're all spaced apart. So how would you describe the distribution of nutrients in this type of environment? Evenly distributed. The nutrients are evenly distributed, but also, Jason, if, let's say this is a bear, right? Let's zoom in on this bear, allegedly. There he is. I want to zoom in on this guy. He is evenly spaced apart from any other competition. So uniform is not only an even distribution of nutrients, but it is also an even spacing of the individuals to avoid competition. You stay out of my tree, or you stay out of my area, I will stay out of your area, and we don't have to fight. We don't have to compete. So uniform really helps to avoid competition. And then Isabella, how would you describe random distribution?
All over the place.
Yeah, it's just all over. This is mainly due to an absence of attraction or repulsions. Nutrients are totally just scattered. There's really no discernible distribution of the nutrients. They're everywhere. It's kind of like trees in a forest. It's just all over the place. All right, let's go to survivorship curves, shall we? Let's go to curve 1. The curve 1 is in red. This is where you have success of youth and high mortality at older ages. So if you guys take a look at the x-axis and the y-axis, the red graph, type 1 curve. This represents mammals for the most part. This includes us. You have a lot of success in the first half of your life. You tend to see the majority of death after the midpoint of your lives. This is mainly because of parental care. Your parents take care of you and they nurture you and they help you grow when you're younger, and you are eventually aided in reaching a point of your life where you can take care of yourself. And then people start to die off of just natural causes that we all get afflicted by at one point or another in our lives. Let me fix this real quick, and I want you guys to be very conscious of how I have this set up. Notice I have type 3 and then type 2. Sorry about that initial typo. It's going to be type 1, type 3, then type 2. So we're going to do type 3 next. Okay? Type 3 is the exact opposite of type 1. Type 3 is high mortality of youth. Few reach adulthood. These types of organisms would be like insects, fish, invertebrates, because they lack parental care. So this is why a lot of them die off early. Sea turtles are another type of example. I know they're not an invertebrate, they're not a fish, but if you think about it, a mother sea turtle lays her eggs on the beach and she's gone. She's gone forever. Most of the sea turtles die within the first few minutes of life. They get eaten by predators all over the beach: raccoons, seagulls, hawks, vultures, crabs, and very few sea turtles in a nest actually make it to the ocean. And then they have to grow up. So it's not going to be easy. So a type 3 curve would be individuals, types of animals and plants and whatnot that don't have parental care. And then type 2 is going to be a mortality rate that is constant over the lifespan, where your age really doesn't have any bearing on when your death is. It's just as you get from the beginning of your life to the end of your life, the death rate is constant. That's why it's a straight line, and it's going to be going down because nothing lives forever. So be careful not to confuse 3 and 2. In my experience, everybody gets 1, but you tend to go from 1 to 2 to 3, and you think 2 and 3. I've had a lot of students get those flip-flops. Be careful not to make that mistake. All right, age structure diagrams. I'd like you guys to take a look at these two. Which one of these age diagrams would you expect to have a high, let me rephrase that. Which of these two age diagrams would you expect to have an increasing population? The left or the right? Why the left, Rachel? Okay, if you take a look at this region here in yellow, this is the pre-reproductive group. Pre-reproductive. These are children. They're not having offspring yet. This region, we're going to say from, let's go 40 to 19 years old. This is the reproductive group. They are currently having offspring right now, so this is reproductive. And then the region at the very top is the post-reproductive. So when I taught you this, I told you that you need to flash forward 20 years into the future. Which population is going to have a greater death rate right now, before we go 20 years into the future? Which population has a greater post-reproductive age group? The right or the left? The right. Let's make this easy. So A or B, all right? Which one has a greater post-reproductive group, A or B? B does. So in 20 years, which one is going to experience more death? B. Which one has more children, pre-reproductive age group? A. And so in 20 years, where will that pre-reproductive age group be? They're going to be reproducing. Those 14-year-olds are going to be 34-year-olds. Those 9-year-olds are going to be 29-year-olds. Those 5-year-olds are going to be 25-year-olds. They're going to be reproducing. And you can clearly see that on A, there are far more children than there are compared to B. And in B, there's far more senior citizens, the post-reproductive group, than there are in group A. So the key here, guys, is if you see a pyramid-shaped age distribution diagram, that's the one that is going to experience a population increase. That's going to be the one. If you see any others as kind of bulging from the middle, but very narrow at the bottom, this has, look at this. This group here in B has fewer children than seniors. Deaths will exceed births. But if you look here, look at the amount of old people versus young people, births are going to definitely exceed deaths. So the one on the left is most definitely going to experience a population increase, and the one on the right, population B, is going to experience a population decrease. Any questions? All right, let's keep going. Biotic potential. A biotic potential is the maximum rate at which a population could increase under ideal conditions. It's like the maximum number of offspring you can have if conditions are right. There's a limited amount of disease or disasters, predators, there's plenty of food, water, space, mates. There's a lot of factors that go into this. How long is the reproductive season? You may have heard that alligators currently are in their mating season. They're winding up at people's pools, golf courses, driveways. They're all over the place. They're looking for mates. They don't do that all year. They're pretty dormant in October, November, December. They're just hanging out. But then when it gets to be March and April, it's go time. And they're all over the place. So that could be a factor, is when is your breeding season? And how long is your breeding season? How many offspring can you have at one time? And how many times do you reproduce? Do you reproduce only once a year? Do you reproduce once a decade? There's a lot of different factors that go in here. How old are you when you start to reproduce? That's another big factor. So that all factors into the biotic potential. Okay, let's go to food chain. This is a pathway along which energy, which is in the form of food, is transferred. Now, I want to be sure you guys are aware that an arrow points towards where the energy is going. So if I had grass, beetle, snake, eagle, the arrow points towards where the energy is going, okay? It's not going towards what it's eating. Like if you follow that, you would say, oh, the grass is eating the beetle. No, no, no. The energy from the grass is going to the beetle. The energy from the beetle is going to the snake. That's how you write a food chain. Here's a trophic pyramid. Remember that the base of the pyramid has the greatest biomass, which is a term I'm going to get to later. Biomass is how much of that organism there is in a given community. So let me ask you guys this. What has more biomass in the Gulf of Mexico? You ready? What has more biomass? All the dolphins in the Gulf of Mexico or all the plankton in the Gulf of Mexico? What has more biomass? Plankton, and it's not even close. You might think, well, dolphins have a bigger body. No, you get no argument from me, but there's way more plankton, way more. So that's the greatest biomass. And to get my point across, the primary producers have to have the greatest biomass if a community is going to be successful. So that's why they're always on the bottom of the pyramid. The bottom are the primary producers. These are the autotrophs, by the way. So I'm going to make sure I write that in because I almost forgot to include that. Autotrophs are the primary producers. Auto means self, troph means energy. They make their own energy. And then the rest of the pyramid are heterotrophs. Hetero means other, and troph means energy. They get their energy from other sources, namely each other or the producers. So the primary consumers feast on the primary producers. Secondary consumers feast on primary consumers. Tertiary consumers eat the secondary consumers. And sometimes you can have quaternary consumers eat the tertiary. But not every ecosystem or not every community can actually support a quaternary consumer. It depends on how much energy there is. And then you have the X% of energy transfer. We typically like to say it's 10%. I want to emphasize to all of you, it's not always 10%. It could be 5, it could be 9, it could be 15, it could be 19. But 10 is a psychologically satisfying number, so we like to go with 10. It's in the neighborhood of 10%, but it is not 10% every time. All right, let's get to exponential growth and logistic growth. Exponential growth has a equation, which I'm going to share with you momentarily. But a graph for exponential looks like this. That is an exponential growth curve. This portion of the graph is called the lagging phase. And this portion of the graph is called the exponential phase. In this type of scenario, the reason why it is growing unlimited is because there are no limiting factors. We know that in nature, this is typically not the case. A limiting factor would be something that threatens your life, a predator, a disease, disaster, a lack of food. Those are limiting factors. In exponential growth models, those don't exist. And so you just continue to grow unchecked. Now, I want to remind all of you that when you are growing, you need to determine what the rate is. To determine the rate, you do the y-axis over the x-axis because the x-axis is always time. If we are increasing by, let's say, 22 individuals over 2 years, you want the denominator to always be 1. So you have to do 22 divided by 1. That would be a rate of 11 per year. And notice I put year as singular. 1 year, singular. You always want your rate to be 1 year. I don't say, hey man, how long did it take you to get to Disney World? So I went about 40 miles for 2 hours. No one says that. Or let's say 160 miles per 2 hours. That's how fast I drove. What's 160 divided by 2 is 80. I drove 80 miles per hour, singular. So you always want your rate to be 1. And the bottom is always going to be time, whether it's seconds, days, months, years, whatever. Okay, I'll show you the equation for this now. It's on your AP Bio formula sheet. I had that pulled up online. See if I can find it. Hold on a second. There we go. So, exponential growth curve. R is your growth rate. It's going to be a frequency like 0.3, 0.4, 0.75, 0.15. That's a frequency. And then you multiply it by your population, and that gives you your growth rate. This will be given to you on your exam tomorrow. Just know how to use it. If you really need to look at this lesson again, here's my YouTube channel. I have 2 videos on exponential growth and logistic growth. Lesson 65 and 66. If you go to my playlist, here's my channel. You go to playlists, find Unit 8 Ecology, and just scroll down over here on the right, and you have exponential growth model, and then I have exponential and logistic growth. Something if you need to look over is there for you. It's been there since I recorded those lessons. All right. Let's go back and take a look at a logistic growth model. So a logistic growth model starts off like this, just like an exponential does. Then it tapers off and it plateaus. The reason it plateaus is because there is a carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is K. And carrying capacity is a limit to the number of individuals an area can support. I've told you before, my classroom's carrying capacity is 30 students. I can only support 30. I only have 30 seats. This area is just like the exponential growth curve. That's the lagging phase, where things are kind of start off slow. Then this is the exponential phase. You do see, this is where the birth rate is greater than death. So I'll put B is greater than D. That's the birth rate. And then we actually get to be plateaued. This is basically where births will equal deaths. The birth rate slows down significantly because there is actually a carrying capacity. Now, bonus, guys, if you saw this on your graph, imagine this. It goes down. Woo! Oh, crap. My pen almost broke. It just goes down. What would that indicate? What's that, Bennett? A lot of death. If that were to happen, that would be deaths. A lot of them. Like something major happened and a lot of deaths happened. Okay. Let's keep going. Any questions? The equation for this is also on your formula sheet, and pull it up right there. Logistic growth. You have your growth rate times your population times carrying capacity minus your population over your carrying capacity. That will be given to you on your AP Bio formula sheet, but a formula is worthless if you don't know how to use it. If you need to go over a little refresher, it's on my YouTube channel. I go over it step by step by step. Okay, let's go over limiting factors now. Limiting factors are generally anything that threatens an individual's or a population's well-being. All right. There's two types of limiting factors that we discussed in this class. That was density dependent and density independent. A density dependent factor is something that has to have life to be there. It's a limiting factor. I'm going to put LF for limiting factor that can only occur. This is my own personal definition, not the textbook definition. If life is present. Lucas, is COVID-19 a density dependent or density independent factor?
Dependent.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt you if you're not there. It's not going to happen if there's no life. So this generally includes things like disease, predators, competition. You can't get in a fight if you're not there to get in a fight. Some girl's going to fight Kaylee tomorrow. Not if Kaylee's not there. Can't fight if you're not there. So that's a density dependent factor. Density independent will happen whether life is present or not. So this is going to be mostly natural disasters, but it's not exclusively natural disasters. There was an example on your AP Bio mock exam that was density independent and it wasn't a natural disaster. Let me think if I can think one that's not a natural disaster. Okay. There's a stampede of water buffalo going through the savanna of Africa right now. And there's an anthill that's present in their path. Will that stampede happen whether the anthill is there or not? Does the anthill have to be there for the stampede to occur? No. So that stampede would be a density independent factor. It doesn't matter if there's life there or not. It's going to happen. The stampede's going to happen. A hurricane is coming to Florida. And the whole state evacuates. Is the hurricane going to not come now? No, the hurricane is going to come. That's why we say mostly natural disasters are density independent. They're independent of the life, the density, how much life is there. All right, let's go to growth patterns. Our strategists. Our strategists have short lives, small bodies, no parental care. Let's see. They're highly adaptable. Let's see, what else am I missing? Early maturity. High offspring yield. That means that they reproduce a lot of babies. They make a lot of offspring. They're mostly small, but it's mostly things like insects, but it's not everything is strictly R or K. There can be many in between, like a turtle, a sea turtle. It has R strategist qualities where it has a lot of offspring, but it also has K strategist qualities where they're large and they live a very long life. So K strategists have few offspring. Like, think about that. How many of you are single children? Anybody? Let's say no one's raising their hand. Lucas is. So, Lucas, in your entire parent's life, they reproduce one time. That's not a lot of offspring, is it? So, few offspring. This would include intensive parenting. Slow maturation. Do you know when you guys are, I'm not saying legally adult, but you know when you're biologically an adult? 24. You are not a biological, fully grown adult till you're 24. That's when your brain is finished. That's why 18 to 24-year-olds, they have that demographic. 18 to 24-year-olds are more likely to engage in reckless behavior because your brains aren't done. That's why. All right. Let's see. Few offspring, long lives, less adaptable. Typically, whenever there's an extinction, the K strategists are the first to go. Let's see what I'm missing. Short lives, small bodies. Okay, so large bodies for the most part. I think that covers it. K stands for carrying capacity. They have their limits. All right, an ecological niche. This is your purpose or role in an ecosystem. At the very end of yesterday's lecture on evolution, I want to reiterate that extinctions can be a good thing because it leaves a lot of open niches. An open niche is like an open job vacancy. Something died or something got fired, someone new can come and fill that role. When the dinosaurs were wiped out, mammals took over and they were able to get really big and they filled the roles that the dinosaurs left open. So niches are your job and every niche must be filled. If it's not filled, it will get filled. Competitive exclusion. This principle means that no two species that share the same niche can occupy the same area. So an example that we did in class, everybody, is that bacteria. I want you to check this out. So let's say this is bacteria number 1. It has a growth rate. Here's bacteria number 2. It has a growth rate. And then we put them together. Here's what we saw. Isabella, what happened?
The second one took over.
Bacteria 2 outcompeted bacteria 1. They both had the same niche. They do the same thing. But this competitive exclusion principle states that if you occupy the same niche, you can't coexist. Or can you? And this goes to the other one, which is resource partitioning. This is where you specialize specialized niches to avoid competition. So a classic example I did in class are two birds of prey, a hawk versus an owl. Kaylee, how do a hawk and an owl avoid direct competition with each other?
They have different, like, not niche, but like they eat different things.
No, they both eat rodents and small mammals and birds.
Oh, they're different feeding times.
Different feeding times, night and day. A hawk and an owl won't directly compete because their hunting times are different times of the day, so they're not going to interact with each other. That is resource partitioning. An easy example I gave in class was Rachel is the resident pizza eater in this classroom. That is her niche. That is her job. And then comes a new student like Isabella. She comes in. She's the pizza eater from where she's from. Well, are we going to have competitive exclusion where one of them is going to wipe out the other? Or can they partition their niches where they get more specialized? So let's say that Rachel is going to specialize her niche to focus on cheese pizza. Isabella's going to specialize her niche to focus on pepperoni. Bada bing, bada boom, you avoid competition because your niche is now more specialized. All right, let's go to interactions. We all know what competition is. It is striving to obtain resources. To put it lightly, fighting, intimidating. You can't use the word in the definition, so I can't say competition is competing for resources. So I'm going to say something else, like striving to obtain those resources, doing what you can, but it does typically lead to conflict. You're fighting, you're intimidating. Remember that space and mates and food are the big three. That's what you're competing for: space, mates, and food. All right, predator prey. Check this out. See if you recall this. Black is going to be the prey. Red is going to be the predator. Let's say the prey has trends like this. There were four or five questions that you need to be able to answer. Isabella, why are the prey items so low down here at the very beginning of the graph? Right here. Yeah, so the predators must be high. But because the prey is low, what will happen to eventually the predator trend? It'll go down. Because the predator trend is going down, what will the prey trend go? The prey is going to go up. And because the prey is going up, what will the predators do? They will go up. And because the predators are going up, what will the prey do? They will go down. And because the predators are going down, what will the prey do? It goes up again. So it's a vicious cycle almost. The predator trend always follows the prey trend. You need to be able to answer those questions. And I'm going to repeat those again. Over here, I asked her first, why is the prey population down? She said because the predator population is high. And then the next question is, well, because the prey is down, what will that do to the predators? The predators will go down. If the predators are going down, what will that do to the prey? The prey will go up. If the prey is going up, what effect will that have on the predators? The predators will go up. If the predators are going up, what effect will that have on the prey? The prey will go down. And because the prey are going down, what will that do to the predators? The predators will go down. And it just repeats itself. Be sure that you can answer those questions. That's a predator-prey relationship. Next, we have symbiosis. There's 3 different types of symbioses. Symbiosis is a relationship between 2 species in which at least one benefits. Mutualism is where they both benefit. It's a win-win. Commensalism is where one benefits, the other is neutral. It's not harmed, it's not hurt, it's not aided. And the parasitism is one benefits, by harming the other. Mosquitoes, ticks, worms, parasites. A virus is even considered this. Defenses. We didn't talk about this one a whole lot. I'll go over real quick. We have horns, spines, toxins, warning coloration. You know, don't come near me, I'm dangerous. Camouflage. These are all defenses to help you stay alive. Then we have Geochemical Cycles. You guys, water cycle is pretty simple. You have evaporation, condensation, precipitation. Real quick, what do you call the evaporation of water from plants? 10% of all evaporation. Transpiration. This is why stomata closed. That goes back to our photosynthesis lesson with C4 plants. Okay. The carbon cycle. If this is the atmosphere, this is the Earth. What type of organisms, or excuse me, in what way does CO2 go to life on Earth? What type of, I shouldn't say animals, what type of organisms actually use carbon dioxide? Yeah, so that's gonna be photosynthesizers, so this will be photosynthesis. How does carbon dioxide return to the atmosphere? What are my cells doing? Respiration, cell respiration. That's really all that you guys really need to know there. Let's go to nitrogen cycle. Let's see. We have nitrogen in the atmosphere. This is going to go to denitrifying bacteria. Denitrifying bacteria are able to take nitrogen that's not useful and make it useful to Earth. Then we have nitrifying bacteria. Or makes it available to plants. And then, plants use it up. Remember that proteins, the key element in proteins is nitrogen. Animals like herbivores, cows, elephants, whatnot, they eat grass all day. And those are some of the biggest animals on Earth because they have a lot of muscle. Nitrogen is the key element in protein. So they eat all these plants. There's nitrogen in those plants that helps fuel their muscles. And then through just decomposition and back to nitrifying or denitrifying bacteria, it goes back up into the atmosphere. And then we have the phosphor cycle. I want to make sure you all are very clear about this. It is not in the atmosphere. It's in the earth. So you have phosphorus in the earth. It comes up to the surface by weathering. Weathering is just rain beating down rocks for hundreds and thousands of years. The runoff takes into the ocean. It lays into the sediment. It ships back into the earth by upheaval. And it starts all over again. This is how we get phosphorus in our DNA. All right, we're almost done. Human impacts on the earth. Eutrophication. Do any of you remember this definition? This is happening in South Florida right now in Lake Okeechobee.
The algae.
Yeah, there's excessive nutrients. Excessive nutrients in waterways results in algal blooms. Algae is a photosynthesizer, and a photosynthesizer needs fertilizer. Well, when you have all this nutrients in fertilizer that runs off into the waterways, it's basically fueling tremendous algae blooms. The algae blooms suck up all the nutrients in the water, but eventually the algae die. And then all the fungi in the water breaks down the algae. Fungi use oxygen. Because the fungi are so active breaking down the dead algae, they use up all the oxygen in the water. That results in all the fish dying. So whenever there's eutrophication, you tend to see a lot of fish kills, just dead fish all over the surface of the water and on the shoreline because they ran out of oxygen. They ran out of oxygen because the fungus used up all the oxygen. What's the fungus doing? The fungus is breaking down all the dead algae. Why is there so much dead algae? Because there was so much living algae. Why is there so much living algae? Because there was excessive nutrients introduced into the water. Biomagnification is the concentration of toxins increases with each trophic level. We didn't really talk about biomagnification. I have about 3 minutes. So if you, let's say that Bennett is a shark, Bennett the shark. Bennett is going to eat one fish at a time. Let's say that each fish has some poison in it. Every fish that Bennett eats is more poison in Bennett. This fish may have like maybe 1 gram of poison in it, but he keeps eating these fish. The amount of poison that's going to be, let's say he eats all those fish, he's going to have 5 grams of poison in him. And then it just goes up and up and up and up the food chain. That's biomagnification. As you go through each level of the food chain, more and more toxins or pollutants are found. Global warming is just pollution, changes climate. I'm really trying to hustle through this because we have less than 2 minutes. Habitat destruction. I think that's really self-explanatory. Deforestation, turning forests and swamps into neighborhoods. Invasive species, non-native species outcompete natives. Okay. Guys, a few other things I have written down. I'm just going to ask you to look over. Be sure you know how to do the Simpsons Diversity Index. That's a formula that's on your formula sheet. If I can switch over. Simpsons Diversity Index right there. I looked over my video this morning. I think I did a pretty good job in explaining how the Simpsons Diversity Index works. Please look that video over. It's very helpful. That was the bell. So let me just finish up a few things here, tap some loose ends. Keystone Species. If you remove a keystone species, what happens to the community? Yeah, the whole thing just changes dramatically, and it might be it's likely for the worst. I think that is pretty much it. Let me just look over my list here. Blah 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 blah. Let's do a keystone species. This will take less than 1 minute. Otter, crab, slug, kelp. Okay, you take out the otter. Otter got overhunted. What happens to the amount of crabs? Goes up. What happens to the amount of slugs? Why? Because there's way too many crabs present. They're eating all the slugs. So no more slugs. What happens to the kelp? Goes up. Why? There's no slugs eating them. That means that the otter is a keystone species. If you take it away, it's going to dramatically affect the dynamics of the entire community. All right, that is it. Tomorrow.